I thought I was live the entire time. Why, hello, hello, hello. Sorry about that. I thought I hit live, but evidently when you hit the little countdown thing, it turns you off from being live. So, what we got going on? We got shenanigans going over. At least I caught this before it got farther along with it. So, before I do end up sharing this, I am going to remove that for right now. So, what we're planning on doing over at this episode of episode 5 of the Barely There podcast, we are going to dive into the con. That's right. We ended up going to the local con where we ended up having some experiences. What I'm going to end up talking about is some things that I ended up learning, some things that we can end up getting better with it, my experience with the con, and then obviously the goodies I have that I ended up picking up at the con. Also, I had a lucky, well, first or anything where I had a friend pick some stuff up or able to hook me up with stuff from a different con. We're going to end up diving into that. We got some future things. And then, of course, I've been saving this little guy to be open at the very end. So, with that being said, let's talk about Panelbound Comics, where you can use the discount code of FifthJack to save $2 off. Or if you have the code, or if you have 4 or more books, use the code Jacket Together to save 5% off your entire order instead. Orders up $30 or more ends up getting free shipping, and you end up seeing how bomb-proof that OPB is. All right, OPB, PBC is. Wow, it's been forever since they've been OPB. Okay, getting hung up here. So let me go over and present what I ended up having. We're going to go present screen, share screen. So, something that I ended up learning. Well, I took this backpack, and well, that was not the bestest choice because this was the only backpack that I had, and the straps are a little bit, well, flimsy. And if you're putting heavy books into it, it's not the greatest idea, and you were worried about it ripping out the entire time. And that leads to another situation. If you're taking any kind of books over to a con, make sure you have the dust jacket off it because those dust jackets could take a little bit of a beating. I've seen some horror stories that ended up coming over from the con that ended up going over like that, where the dust jackets ended up just getting ripped up to shreds and everything. So I don't feel as bad for what I ended up going with. So in the future, I am planning on having a new backpack, one that's a heavy duty where it can support the weight of heavy books. And I plan on slapping a nice little Bears Lair logo on there, along with where you can end up seeing it. And that would be a kind of a good upgrade. And I'm going to make sure if I take any kind of omnibuses, any kind of deluxes or anything like that, I don't have the dust jacket on there because I like to have the signature on the inside where it's nicely protected. And that way it could end up being a nice little bonus that I got inside there. So that's the lessons I ended up having right off the get-go. I also learned a little bit about myself where I need to, well, come a little bit more out of my shell. It was nice. I ended up finishing the night off great. But I had a little bit of stumble start. So with that, let's go over and actually share what event I ended up going to. Share screen. Boop, boop. So I went to the Cherry Capital Comic Con. This is over in Traverse City, Michigan. So I ended up going to that, and there was one big reason I wanted to go to this con. And that would be because Mark Waid was going to be there. And he was there. Different crews that you ended up having. You had Phineas and Ferb. You had those voice actors. I have a fun story with one of those that we're going to end up diving into a little bit later. Tom Waltz was there, where he's known for Last Ronin, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the newer story of Null, the voice actor for Jim, the older cartoon that you ended up having, and also Ariel, who was Orion Pax's girlfriend. And if you don't know Orion Pax, well, shame on you if you're calling your Transformers fan, because Orion Pax is the form before he ends up becoming Optimus Prime. Ted DiBiase, which is the $1 Million Man, which I honestly didn't really care for. I'm not too huge into wrestling. Jim Larson was also there, which is more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle goodness. I think this person ended up canceling. Rags Morales was also there, known for Identity Crisis. I have another story that's going to end up going to it. One big regret that I have is I didn't go see Gene Ha, who was also there. And then we also end up having Seth the Moose, which we're going to be talking about him later as well. We're going to we have some experiences that we're going to be covering, and Tom Waltz, Mark Wade, and Seth the Moose. We ended up having a few interests in there. Oh, and also with Rag Morales. That was a pretty fun time. So what ended up happening? Let's talk about it. My friend and I ended up heading up that way, making a little guy's trip. Had a fun time, went up that way, got turned around, got going different directions, because if you don't know what's happened up here in northern Michigan, we had some flooding that ended up taking out a bunch of streets, a bunch of bridges, and they had to loop us all different ways that went on with that. GPS did amazing. We ended up getting there, taking a different way over through Traverse City that we didn't realize. But we got there and ended up parking in the grass. Parking lot's full, the main parking lot, which is fine. But fortunately for us, we ended up coming up with a plan, because we had a stack of books that we ended up wanting to get done. Both of us wanted to get a couple books done and get those going on. So what we decided is that we're going to, go for the signatures right off the get-go. Oh, before I keep on going, this was on a Sunday, because this is a guaranteed day off that I could end up having, and it's a good, easier way for him to be able to have a day off as well. And so, back over to what we got. Get focused here. And always, we ended up going in there. We got all our signatures knocked out. All of them. We ended up seeing Mark Wade right off the get-go. We were talking to him a little bit. This is where I was a little bit still in my shell. My friend was taking over the point. He was talking about that. I loved how he was a historian of the Marvel and DC universes. And so, another thing is that another friend I ended up having ended up going to the show the day before. But he forgot one thing. He wanted to take his Superman and Spider-Man. Yeah, Superman and Spider-Man, which has the main story by Mark Wade, and wanted to get it signed. So that made us have a mission that we're going to end up taking it. We ended up finding a copy of it at the store or over at the con, getting it signed for him, specifically because he ends up helping me out with, well, you'll see later what he helped me out with. And so I figure I'll go, he helped me, I help him, we call it all good. Solid way to be able to go for it. So we ended up doing that. Get this off real quick. We go over with that, but then we get him to get Mark Wade to sign that. Get him to sign the books that we're going with. My friend ended up having a copy of Irredeemable, I believe it is, that he had signed. I went a little bit ham. I had Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Daredevil, and Superman Birthright, And of course, well, a copy of Superman and Spider-Man for him to sign. And then I went for my friend. I ended up getting those signed, got that going on. Uh, he did a little bit special thing with my Superman birthright, which we'll see a little bit later. But I had a heck of a time with that. It was definitely no wine, no nothing. Next, we were planning on going over to see Rags to have him sign our copies of Identity Crisis. But we ended up bumping into Seth the Moose. So we ended up talking with that because my friend was talking us up and be telling us that we need to go stop by over to him. So we stopped over by him and we looked over at his art. We got going over with it. And my friend that I rode with was getting some original art that he wanted to get of a certain character of Moon Knight. And that was awesome. But Seth only had one picture and he saw it and he wasn't quite completely sold. He was in the process of talking. He was talking about maybe doing it. So we leave the table, goes over to Rags Morales, where we end up getting our copies of Identity Crisis. However, there's a little twist to this. He had the original trade paperback that he had when he was younger, like 16 years ago. And I had the fancy deluxe that was the 20th anniversary with it. So he had the old, I had the new, but we went over. He was talking about the stories, how he ended up going with it. Sadly, I couldn't add anything because I haven't started that yet because my event crisis events hasn't been going off yet. Haven't decided when I'm going to trigger that. But at some point, we're going to end up triggering it. But I regress. I got to get back on point. So we ended up getting over that. We actually ended up getting a picture with Rags Morales, where he ended up taking that picture, and that's going to be something that's going to be posted for his social medias. I'll end up having a link down after the show pointing you over to that direction. And we'll keep on going with that. Then we went out, got out of the show real quick, put our books, put them away because we got our big signatures done that we wanted to get done, got that finished. Come back over to Seth the Moose. So this is trip number 2. He's right there drawing a Moon Knight specifically for him and everything. He's like, I caught the vibe that you weren't going over with this, and I'll give you the show price for this and everything. He's like, okay. So my friend ended up picking that up at the show price that ended up going, and it was completely awesome that he started that. But we're not done yet. They ended up announcing that they ended up having a couple deals going on because it's a Sunday. Sunday's the deal day because it's the last day of the show and everything. So I got thinking, we ended up going back over, and that's when we end up going over to the table of, let me share. It's like I need a little bit of a minion that comes over with it. Nope, that's not the one. Of David Ingro Jr. So he was over at the tables and everything. He was waiting for it going on. And we came over and we actually seen him. We got chatting with him. A big thing that we were talking about was X-Men 97. Because if you don't know, he ended up remove. Stop screen. Share screen. He ended up voicing a few characters: Leech, Banshee, Gallilator, Mojo, Radio, and Royal Messengers. We got talking to him about wondering if he was going to be in season 2. So spoilers, if you're not wanting to hear that, cover your ears for a hot second. Fortunately, he's not going to be in season 2. he didn't get a call back or anything like that. But we got talking a little bit about that, and what ended up happening is he ended up talking in the Leech voice. Yeah, that's right. He had the moment when he ended up going with it, because we got specifically talking about that Remember It episode and how famous and how big that went off and everything. So he ended up talking in the Leech voice and says, Magneto will save us. Oh no. And it just completely cracked me up and everything. Had that super awesome experience with that, showing that you don't have to spend money to have those big experiences, but when you have them, you got to cherish them. And that was something that I ended up loving that went on with that. So from there, we ended up leaving that and going over to, well, he ended up going over talking to Ariel because one of his friends is a big fan and wanted to get a picture and everything that goes on with it. I, however, went a different route because right next to her was Tom Waltz. And we ended up talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, specifically Last Ronin. And I was like, I didn't bring anything for you to sign because I don't know if you get an omnibus. I'm going to upgrade to an omnibus for the Last Ronin. And I kind of don't want to be feeling bad about anything like that. And he's like, I totally understand. I'll be here next year. So bring your stuff then. But we got talking about that. We got talking about got to go some interaction. I ended up getting my picture taken with him. You see here. I think this is the one I'm looking for. It is. And stop screen. Present. Share screen. Entire screen. Share. So as you can see, I ended up sharing. Got my picture taken with him, and that was an amazing experience. I'm probably about 60 or probably 70% sure that I'm going to head over there just because of that and Septic Moose. Oh yeah, I might as well try wrapping that up. So we go over to Septic, or we get that done. We get talking with him. I ended up picking up a print, obviously, that came over, and I got signed by him because I had to at least get something signed by him. I wanted to make sure I got something because I want to go next year, but never know what did end up happening. So I ended up getting that, get talking with it, got set up, and then we ended up going back over to Septic Moose. Septic Moose got finishing it up, finished up the drawing, set it over, picked it up, and I go over. I'm like, I want to have you make a custom thing. Can I get you to make Lionel with the Sword of Omens? Just something that's impromptu. Because obviously, if you look back here, I'm a big Thundercats fan, and that's where I'm going to go hard into that area. So he's like, actually, I have a print that ends up covering that. I ended up submitting that over to Dynamite. They weren't completely sure about it. So I ended up going a different route and made it a print. So I'm like, done. I'll pick it up. Well, I have a deal going on. So I picked up 2 other prints. You have to wait until later to see what those other prints are, though. But I ended up picking up the other prints to obviously gotta capitalize on the deal, especially when it's buy 2, get 1 free, and then one be a gift for myself. But that was the big experience. However, I have decided that I kind of want to end up share that. Share screen with Sefta Moose. I am looking for that on Facebook. So I immediately ended up adding him the next day. And what happens is that you could end up seeing this awesome art that he ends up doing. So I kind of decided that next year, if I go, what I'm going to end up doing is I am going to definitely do a commission with him. And I think this is crazy, but I think I want him to do the character of Panthro. I think by his art style that you can see here, I think he'll knock it out of the park. He does awesome with the Ninja Turtles. And I think he'll go great with what he ends up going with it. So I think I'm going to have him do Panthro if I get a commission. And that's my game plan. I would love to try to get a commission that goes over, give him plenty of time to be able to get any kind of art that he wants to get done, or any plenty of time before the con that he can end up having that, and then go to the con and pick that up. Definitely something I ended up wanting, especially even more because my friend ended up getting a piece done of the Batman Who Laughs. He had that commission that he picked up the day before, and oh my goodness, it's amazing. That was amazing. But all right. So enough about that. That's the Cherry Capital Con. That's covered what we ended up having. That's my experience that we ended up picking up there. So let's go through what I ended up getting signed and set up. So, like I told you, I got the Daredevil Omnibus. This is volume 2. Volume 2. With Mark Waid's signature. Volume 1. Superman Birth. Oh, I'm going to make you wait for that one because that's going to be a nice little special thing. And then My Identity Crisis, signed by Rags. As you can see there. And my version of Superman and Spider-Man volume or first print. I don't know if there's going to be other prints of that. Got that signed by Mark Waid. I think I want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to get everyone that worked on this story, or as many as I can. So let me know if you're going to a con, and I kind of want to try to hook it up with anyone else. Try to get as much as I can get covered with this, because I know I'm not going to any more cons this year. I'm sorry, but this is going to be the first one we went with as a channel and stuff like that. That's okay, because like next year, we're going to plan on doing a little bit more con action, but that's a big project that I want to be wrapping up. Now, a last road imprint signed by Tom Waltz. Septimus, Lionel print, also signed by him, and put it with my name. We gotta keep this quiet because he's over in the next room. But I got Absolute Batman signed by Septimus. That's for my kiddo. He just graduated this year. Congratulations, buddy. He's not getting added to the graduation party. And then he had one that he was out in the desert. And I immediately thought about Apex, but I know it's not Apex and it's a desert version of that. But this is the bloody version. He ended up signing for me. Now, let's wrap up the Cherry Capital Con because I know I teased you a little bit. So, Superman Birthright, the deluxe edition. So what Mark Waid did is he made his own Superman logo right there in there on top of his signature. I ended up watching that, and that was an awesome way to ended up personalize it and making it awesome. Obviously, this is a book that's never going to end up leaving my collection because any of the books I ended up getting signed, those are personal memories that I ended up having. Like, for instance, I ended up having an experience where I ended up getting to see Jim Lee, and I ended up taking my Jim Lee and Chris Claremont Volume 2, because I only had 2, signed by him. That's never going to leave the collection. That's always going to be part of the collection because of the experience and the stuff that I ended up going with it. So that's definitely going to end up staying. So, other goodies. Well, the week before that before the Cherry Capital Con, was Motorcity Con, where my friend was able to end up going over there and able to sign some few things. However, there's a nice little story that I have to be set up with that. Let me share a screen real quick. Boop. Boop. So I got talking with Drew Moss over on our Blue Sky and got talking with him because I knew that he was going to Motorcity Con, and I wanted to make sure that I ended up getting something that goes on. So we got talking, going back and forth. I decided to get a remark and a signature done. This is what we ended up doing it. My friend found him over at the Motorcity Con. I guess it was a little bit of a chore about that. He got to chat it up. And best part about this is with me wanting him to end up going over and getting this autograph and this remark is that he ended up finding a new artist that he ended up loving. And he was talking to me. He's like, he was really down to earth. He was amazing. He was right there. He was going over. I went over. I took your issue right over to him because I specifically looked for an issue that he ended up drawing the cover onto. I know he did the interiors because he's the main artist on the Thundercats and now Thundercats X Silverhawks. So I ended up taking issue number 6 of Thundercats that ended up having perfect area to be able to do any kind of remark, any kind of on all that other jazz. So I ended up going that route. And what ended up going with that was something that was going to end up blowing my mind because he legitimately, and this is my friend repeating the story that he was talking about, that he ended up going over, taking the book. Okay. Took the book. He's like, I'm going to take my time. I want to make sure I draw this. I want to take time, make it nice and perfect. Give me a little bit of time, which was no problem because he had other signatures that he ended up looking for and going for. In the process, he ended up taking my Thundercats Lost number 1 and got that signed. Whoops. Let me go over here, and got that signed right down here by Mark Bagley. It was like a lukewarm situation of experience that he went over with it. Either way, I'm sure he ended up having a whole lot of Spider-Man signing and everything with it. I wanted to go something different. I wanted to go something that I enjoy, which is Thundercats, and I had him do the cover of Thundercats Lost. Because of that reason, I was going to do a real remark, but I didn't really have the fundage planned out for it. Which leads to the other ideas that didn't pan out. I was going to try going over and have Stephanie Phillips sign my Daredevil number 1, the foil cover with Ryan Stegman's art on it. I was going to have her sign that and then eventually maybe find Stegman, which Stegman sometimes goes to Cherry Capital Con. But unfortunately, her and Scott Snyder, which was another one I was going to end up doing, were busy and the lines goes over with it. He said he waited like an hour in line in the Scott Snyder line and it wasn't moving. And Stephanie Phillips is right next to him. So there was not really a good way with it because they ended up having a panel together, which would have been awesome to go over with it and see it. Needless to say, my friend ended up getting back over to Drew Moss to pick up the book and everything. And oh my goodness, this piece, I'm saying this right now. This piece is going up on the back wall right here, where my head will end up covering it, unfortunately. But maybe I could end up trying floating. But we're going to replace this Thundercats number 2. That's right, that classic one with this, because he knocked it out of the park. There's the remark with that. Check that out. Autographed and everything, perfect area. And I know this is kind of crazy, but what we're going to plan on doing is this is going to go right here and look like that it's bringing up the Thundercats insignia. That is immediately going over with it. And it had me decide something, because I guess he regularly goes over to Motorcity Con, and it's kind of to a point where I want to end up going there. And that's what I'm planning on doing next year, if I could end up freeing the fundage for it and keep on building up bigger. So if I go to Motorcity Con, the next year after that, I kind of want to go to Heroes Con. I know that's a much bigger con that goes over with it, but I have my friends like James, for instance, Mr. Man in the chair in background. He ends up going over to that con. You end up having Bunk, Master B, Chris from Marvel Ultimate Alliance. You end up having BJ Kicks with Comics Are Dope, ends up going over to that con. And a few other YouTubers that goes over, so it'll be an awesome meet and greet area and a good experience that comes over with it. Plus, I'll be a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more well-rounded, a little bit more set up, hopefully for the con. But however, if I do end up going, I am planning on, oops, what did I do? Share screen. Share that screen. Perfect. I am planning on Drew Moss doing a little bit of work for me, and I want to do a commission. It's going to be Thundercats, and I'm going to leave it up to him, whatever he ends up doing. Like I said, at Thundercats Heroes, that's all I ended up saying to him for the remark. He ended up going Lion-O, and I love it, and I plan on doing that myself if going over with it. But another little treat that I would love to end up picking, and as you can see, I ended up going with original art. This is art that's from the issues. This is where Bunkmeister B is going to end up being happy and everything with this. But I would love to pick up like something like this for him. I want to end up trying to save up money, scrap, save, and be able to pick up a page from the Thundercats book. Because honestly, that's something that I haven't done yet, but I don't want just any page. Like this page would be amazing. This is going to be a page that I'm going to end up liking and enjoying and has some kind of mechanics with it. So right off the get-go, when I quickly looked for art and everything, there could be a wide ranges of prices and everything. Granted, I know 250 is a little bit far to be able to reach for me, or in this case, it's going to be probably about 500 altogether with the custom art and this. And that's going to be a high goal to be able to hit. I am planning on going to Motor City Capital Con with my friend and trying to end up going that route. And I definitely end up seeing Drew Moss in person. That's my goal. That's what I want to end up working towards, and that's what's going to end up happening. So with that being said, that covers the stuff that we ended up doing with the cons. But I can also end up updating a few things that we ended up having. First off, something that has legitimately happened today. Our copy of the Thundercats role-playing game ended up getting set to be able to get shipped out. So we ended up confirming that, and that's going to be ended up coming over. And if you don't know what this is where they ended up taking Thundercats and put it into the Dungeons and Dragons universe, which is a module for that. You got a bunch of different Kickstarters. You got a bunch of things that's going on. Don't worry, I'll cover what we ended up picking up in the cover thing. But if you ended up picking up this project, realize that it's coming out. We also see that on the backer kit, we ended up seeing the Thundercats 40 anniversary omnibuses finally getting shipped out. There's a bunch of them that still was waiting out, and it looks like that's coming up to a close where they ended up finally catching up and be able to get that done. And it looks like we're not going to have that situation with this role-playing modules as well. They were solid grabs, but that's going to be something that's going to go over with that. So that leaves us with one thing and one thing only left to do. What is that? This box needs to be open. You got to find out what's going on, because I got to clean this room. I got to shoot another video, and then I got to spend that time to be editing that video. So we got to find out what's going on with this. And like I said, if you go over to Pound Wound Comics and you want to be picking up a book of your own, head over there, use the discount code of FifitJack. If you have one book, if you have 4 more books, use the code Jack It Together to be able to save 5% off your entire order. I have to say that does help out the channel, helps out you. It's a win-win situation. All right. So with PVC, you have options that you can end up doing for how you want to get it shipped. You could get it shipped with the peanuts, the insert, or bubbles. I know, as soon as I hear bubbles, I'm thinking about the entire Finding Nemo bubbles guy. This had bubbles. You get an invoice. We don't need that. And what's inside that box is Godzilla. That's right. We ended up having the Marvel years of Godzilla. This is going to go great with the IDW. Granted, their books are softcover, where this is hardcover. Yes, it's a standard cover. And then honestly, I kind of really wanted the standard cover. And this was on sale when they ended up having their bigger sale that goes on. A solid pickup, solid grab. So, in review for this wonderful podcast episode that we end up having, that we're barely here, barely there. Well, the Barely There podcast, episode 5, is we ended up going to JerryCon, got some stuff signed, learned some things along the way. We have future goals of going over to Motorcity Con to meet, like Drew Moss, for instance, going to be over there. Get some pieces that's going to go over with that. Or else I want to get a piece by Septic Moose going over of that covers Panthro. And then a mystery that's going to be with Drew Moss. And then the goal past that, a 2-year goal, is going over to North Carolina's HeroCon to be able to get that entire experience going on. What do you think? What do you think about it? Let us know down in the comments down below. And like I said, I'll be sharing all the different contact ways that you can end up going at some point to be able to cover that. Thank you for watching. And until next time, remember, you have the right to bear books. You have the right to bear books. And until next time, we'll see you later.